Please welcome Microsoft MVP and Doug Meetup leader, Andrew Linskak. Today, he will be presenting I'm a D365 F&SC functional consultant or business analyst. How can I leverage Copilot? Please stick around after Andrew's session for a live Q&A.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brad Zabo, and I'm an associate consultant with Argonaut. Today, I'm excited to moderate and introduce Drew Linskak, Director of Delivery, for this great presentation.
Thank you so much, Brad. And hello, everybody. Excited to be here at DynamicsCon. As mentioned, today I'm going to be presenting a topic called I'm a D365 Finance and Supply Chain Functional Consultant or Business Analyst. How can I leverage Copilot? I am a Microsoft MVP and AI ERP specializing in D365 F&SC, and I got my start in Dynamics as an end user, so really happy to be representing the partner community and a Microsoft MVP now and talk about this topic. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm really going to be focusing on two specific types of Copilots as we walk through today's presentation. One using Microsoft 365 Copilot in a various applications, a suite of products, whether that's Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, talking about how we can use it in things like Microsoft PowerPoint, and then also Copilot features within Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management itself. Are we using generative help and guidance? Are we using Copilot summaries? What types of functionality are available to us as end users, as partners, as business analysts that we can leverage at really any time during an implementation? And we'll even talk about using Copilot Studio. How can we extend these solutions that Microsoft has already provided out of the box? What can we do with them? How can we optimize and get the most out of these solutions so we can really have digital transformation within our companies? So we'll talk a little bit about what types of tools are available. We'll talk about some use cases within these various suite of products, and then we'll actually spend a lot of time walking through a demo of how you can use this during a digital transformation or ERP implementation project. I figured we could start in one place. Why not ask Copilot itself? How can we, as functional consultants or business analysts working in D365 Finance and Supply Chain Management, use Copilot? I think we very often tend to focus on the automation experience. How can we get rid of menial tasks? How can we get rid of all these time-consuming things that really don't add value but must get done? And we tend to get caught up in the what if and dream up all these crazy future solutions. But let's focus on the day-to-day. Let's actually look at what do we do on every project, no matter what, starting with things like requirements gathering and analysis. What if I'm facing a new industry I haven't worked in before and I need to ask questions and do research? A lot of times, maybe you were going to Google, you were going to industry textbooks, you were talking to colleagues who had dealt with that type of industry, you were talking to competitors or other ISVs who had worked in those industries. Then you get into the project, you're doing process mapping, you're reviewing current state process maps, you're creating future state process maps, you're trying to come up with a solution design map that might be in various forms. It could be in Visio, could be partially in Excel with data that you have to migrate between systems, and you have to ensure that data is accurate and the values that you're populating make sense so that when you import them into the new tool, that it works correctly. There's going to be a very large data testing and validation process that must get done. You're going to have to create instructions for users. Training and documentation is often something that's overlooked and can be very time-consuming and inefficient. And troubleshooting. So let's go into how we can actually utilize Copilot tools to address some of these scenarios that it says it can address. First off, Microsoft Word. If you have Microsoft 365 Copilot, there's a lot of things you can use right off the bat. So one of them is requirements gathering and research, as mentioned. If you're dealing with a client in a particular manufacturing industry that you've never dealt with before, chances are that internally at your firm, maybe there's not a lot of documentation you can leverage either. So you're going out and doing research, you're looking at public documentation online, and you want to gather that and take notes on that in a centralized place. You can use Copilot within Microsoft Word to start that journey, to start your research and start to bring in notes. Even better if you do have leveraged history within your firm, within your own emails, your OneNote, your meetings, documents you might have created in the past, and you want to centralize all that, you can also leverage Copilot. Ask questions of the data you have within your system that are available leveraging Microsoft 365 Copilot. So you get a 90-page RFP from a client in a certain healthcare industry, and you've dealt with other healthcare clients before, you can now bring in notes or IP your company has created, merge that into answering the RFP, and just make that a much easier, quicker, smoother process. Maybe automating answering some of those questions, which previously you had to manually fill out. Another piece is analysis. If you do have a lot of these documentations, you want to do some analysis, for example, on a business requirements document, or that RFP has, let's say, 500 user stories in it that go from order to cash to record to report to plan to production, inventory to deliver. You want to summarize how many requirements there are by area, how many fits there are by area, gaps there are. You can leverage Copilot to automate some of that analysis you previously were manually building pivot tables for by just asking simple questions and getting data analysis through that. It's also great for sample data generation. One of the scenarios I'll walk you through today is building out sample documents that can be used to perform demos, to connect to Dynamics 365 itself if you're trying to build out a proof of concept or you're trying to build out training. A very good use case is training documents and FAQ documents. We'll look at extending generative help and guidance with custom training material or tailored training material that your organization might create or your partner might create, and you want to make that easily accessible to users as they perform their job duties and not something separate that lives completely elsewhere and they have to access it all the time. So we can really start to connect various apps, various parts of the Microsoft ecosystem to really just make our day-to-day a lot easier and get rid of some of those time-consuming things that we're doing manually. Another form we can use Copilot in is Microsoft Excel. A lot of you have probably seen Copilot for Finance being out for some time, which primarily lives in Excel and Outlook, and being able to automate data reconciliation. It's really good for helping identify outlier data. Do we have certain pieces of information within a whole subset of reports that we've built within Excel that are actually pointing to a problem or a trend that we need to do something about that we wouldn't otherwise have seen? Being able to identify those outliers, being able to help fill in these documents. You can go a long way with that. If you're not good at writing statements or algorithms within Excel and you spent all your time using the help to figure out how to do if then or some average statements, or you want to clippy back to try to get you through, now you have Copilot to ask questions of how to manipulate your data, how to build reports in your data, how to adapt Python code if you're doing forecasting or budgeting or something within Excel. You can actually extend that and make it a lot easier by utilizing Copilot. You don't necessarily need all that technical skill and knowledge and have to be the world's most foremost expert in Excel to now take advantage of all the functions and features it has. So Copilot is really helping reduce that learning curve and ramp up the time companies can adapt to building things within tools they already had. Excel, Word, PowerPoint documents for marketing take forever. I don't really highlight that here, but even as consultants, oftentimes we might be building PowerPoint documents to set the stage for a training topic that we're going to perform that day. If we're presenting at a conference, we are building PowerPoint documents. Copilot can help us build those, can help us take templates we already have and adopt them and put in new charts and reword some of the terminology we have in there to adopt it and tailor it to the audience that we're trying to have, make it more formal, make it more silly, if it's more educational versus more technical, that sort of thing. Copilot can help us with that as well. Next, generative help and guidance. So generative help and guidance is one of these features that actually lives within Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management versus the Microsoft 365 Copilot tools I've been talking about thus far. This has been out now for a little bit. Many of you might already be using it. It is what we call the sidecar experience. Some of you might call it the sidebar experience, where you have Copilot within the tool itself and you can engage in natural language and ask questions around Dynamics 365. Ask questions like, how do I create a sales order? How do I invoice a customer, create a customer payment, release an order from a sales order hold? How do I create a purchase requisition or approve it in workflow? Questions that normally there are standard business processes for. It is connected to public information on Microsoft Learn. So if you're ever to go to Microsoft Learn and pull up the procure to pay process and look at all the individual activities you can do as a buyer or as a purchasing manager and get step-by-step instructions from Microsoft Learn, that is the information generative help and guidance is leveraging to give users the instructions of how to use the system. What a lot of companies now want to do is extend upon that. How can we do things like add maybe more tailored instructions with the terminology for our business that are unique to our industry? How do we include instructions for enhancements that we've done or third-party applications that we've implemented? And how can we interact with our data as well within Copilot? Generative help and guidance alone doesn't allow you to do that, but extending it through Copilot Studio, that's where you're able to now adopt and build and create those types of capabilities. So you can extend Copilot Studio and build those sort of solutions with custom training materials and knowledge sources. For example, if you have IP that you have built as a partner and you now want to embed training manuals for your customers within D365 Generative Help and Guidance, you would be able to do that sort of thing through Copilot Studio. So building upon that a little more, you can upload files in Copilot Studio to the Dataverse securely to use with generative answers. One of the things unrelated to this that was just released in preview for generative help and guidance was the ability to use follow-up questions, suggested follow-up questions after you present a question or an instruction to generative help and guidance. So if I say, how do I create a sales order, and it returns an instruction, it might also show me 3 additional prompts that I could use to follow up. Something many of us have seen if we used Microsoft 365 Copilot or Copilot in a lot of other tools, but wasn't previously in the generative help and guidance feature and now is. So how can we do things like that? How can we build custom follow-up prompts for the users to maybe guide them on their day-to-day activities or guide them and help them understand how to use the system better, understand how to adapt to company-specific business processes and get all of their information in one place. So they can now upload files to the Dataverse securely to use with those generative answers. You can have text-based documents hosted and indexed for use with them. Some of the instructions and guidance I will show today is leveraging Microsoft Word and uploading that to a knowledge source after using Copilot to help create that document to begin with. You can see all of the different formats that are available here: Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDF, text, HTML, CSV, XML, JSON, and so forth. Also, with knowledge sources, as you will see, we can connect to other public data sources. Generative help and guidance is connected to Microsoft Learn public documentation. I can connect it to other public sites as well. So for example, partners, once again, as an easy use case, we have IP or documentation product solutions that we are selling to Dynamics customers we could link our website to the generative help and guidance, extending it within their ERP solution, and them being able to ask questions about us and about our solutions within the D365 ERP solution app. So being able to interact with specific data, being able to extend it that way, and having node level control over all of this. So you do need specific licenses to do some of what we'll walk through here next in our demo, like a Copilot Studio user license to do some of the knowledge source addition that I'm going to do. But we're going to start with more of those simple use cases, going back to the beginning with Microsoft Word, and that's where we're going to pick up here in our demo. So let me go ahead and open a blank Word document, and we're going to really walk through how can I actually start to now build as a functional analyst, as a consultant, how can I use Copilot Studio in a day-to-day basis. Okay, so let's click over here again. So we have our open blank Word document, as you can see. And right away, I have this little Copilot icon that shows up. I also have the Copilot icon here in the top right. And if I click that, it's going to ask me what I want to start drafting. So right away, we're here. We're at DynamicsCon Virtual. Maybe I'm a Microsoft partner and I start doing a bunch of RFPs for event companies. I want to learn more about event companies. What do they need from an ERP solution? What is DynamicsCon? Who are their competitors? I can actually start to do that and build out a little portfolio for this potential customer. Start to actually build out some information that I might not have known previously. It's going to pull that from public documentation. You can see here it's talking about a highly anticipated community-driven event. Obviously, we all know there's a great live event coming up next May in Chicago, but here today we have a virtual event. It knows a little bit about DynamicsCon already. It's highlighting different categorizations of topics and themes around the company and gives me a little conclusion. I can choose to keep that. I can amend it. I can start over. Maybe I want to make it more formal. Let's say I keep it. And then I want to also find out more, like what types of questions should I ask an event company who wants to implement an ERP, for example, for order and inventory management. So here I'm using Copilot. It's telling me where it's gathering its facts from. It's searching the web. It's searching any documentation I might have created and have maybe available on OneDrive. And it's coming up with answers almost immediately. It's telling me that I should research what are their goals and objectives for this ERP implementation project. How much can we do with the ERP standard functionality? What other systems do we need to integrate with? It's then taking things from within my company, and it's actually linking to various documents. So from the web, it's telling me the data sources it got that from, and I'm allowed to now maybe go drill into those URLs and find more information and add it to this document. So right away, I'm able to really gather information from lots and lots of different data sources, which is really, really powerful. All right, so that one's all well and good, but let's go ahead. Let's get rid of this document. Let's start over. Let's find a better use case for maybe a functional consultant. Let's bring in another Word document here. We're going to create it from scratch. We want to actually do something I would do during a project. I need to go ahead and build out test cases. For example, I need to test a procure to pay process. So what test cases are needed for the role of a buyer in creating a purchase order in D365 supply chain management. And I want it to help me create those test cases so I don't actually have to generate all of those manually. If I have a file of a template I want to use to help support that and do it in a specific format, great. If not, I will ask it to generate it, see the result, and kind of go from there. So I'm making sure I'm being very specific with my prompting. I'm not just saying test cases for purchase orders. Even though it is a Microsoft tool, I am telling it the role that I'm using, and I am telling it that it's D365 supply chain management and not Business Central or another product, so that it's looking for the correct instructions. And you can see here, it's coming up with a decent amount of test cases already for a very simple scenario. What are the things I need to do as a buyer? I can create the purchase order. The purchase order number is generated automatically. If our business case is that we want to create that manually for whatever reason, I know I need to go and update this instruction, but it's allowing me to really expedite a very simple process that maybe we're doing manually right now if we don't have a good test plan or we don't have S&OPs created for a business. And I can now leverage this not only for a repository of documentation for training, but maybe I want to take this and put this in the hands of the users directly where they are actually doing this sort of thing. I want to put it in the ERP as they're performing these test cases so they don't have to waste time going between different systems. So let's go ahead and do one more use case from Microsoft Word that we're going to take back and leverage within D365. So I am actually going to ask it to do two things. And to start with creating a fake manual, for a company called Drew's Brews. So this is going to be a combination coffee and brewery solution that integrates with D365 supply chain management for manufacturing execution. We all know that both coffee and beer brewers, they have a lot of complex needs when it comes to quality, when it comes to measuring labor and time and how they consume ingredients. So a manufacturing execution solution specifically tailored to them seems like a great business to get into. Module to integrate with D365 supply chain management. And we're going to say, go ahead and generate. All right, so it's creating a very sample, basic outline of a manual here. Introduction, welcome to the Drew's Brews Manufacturing Execution module. It's giving me a table of contents, system requirements, operating system needs to be Windows 10 or later, the RAM, storage requirements, D365 supply chain management version. It's telling me how I can go ahead and install this, contact support. I can go ahead and customize anything that I want here. I could go ahead and let's say I want to drop in a logo. So I'm going to go to insert and we're just going to do a little shameless plug for Microsoft tools. I want to add in a picture since this is going to be a manual. So I'm going to drop in a header here and let's put a picture in there. This morning we created a little icon here for Drew's Brews, the new company. So, okay, Microsoft Designer, we used a prompt to create a beer, coffee, brewing logo. That's perfect. I want to make sure that's in my manual before I start selling this this execution module to all my clients. So we'll stick that in the manual. Okay, and then let's say something's really, I don't know, not well-rounded enough. We want to make sure we have instructions for how to configure this add-on module within D365. So let's say maybe that's mostly here. Let's ask it to provide step-by-step instructions for configuring the production scheduling app within D365 supply chain management. So I'll fix my typos, even though it would probably understand me anyway. And we'll just be a little bit more specific so it doesn't think the actual production scheduling native functionality. This is going to be the Drew Brews. And we'll see if it understands this prompt. It's a very specific prompt. But hopefully now by creating this document, I've given it enough information, it can come up with some creative content here that I can leverage. All right, so let's see what it says. All right, so it's giving me some more specific documentation now. Downloading the manufacturing, the MEM installer, give it a nice little acronym there, running the installer, setting up the database, finalizing installation. It gave me some configuration settings. So configuring email and SMS notifications, permissions, API configuration, data synchronization, and actually telling me where it's showing that information. And in this case, it took a lot of it from this same document. So it's leveraging information I've already created. So we're going to copy that, and we're just going to drop it here at the end for now. So we have a nice large document to work with. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to save this. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to drop this in the DynamicsCon folder, make it nice and easy to find. All right, so we've leveraged Copilot to do a couple of things, do research. Now we've created some custom content. We have a manual. We have a fake company we've created. We're doing a lot of great stuff here. But how does this relate back to D365? So how can we extend Copilot with Copilot Studio now and leverage that information we created? As I mentioned, generative help and guidance is a little sidecar experience here. I can ask questions about D365 and it will use Bing search, grab that information from Microsoft Learn and go from there. But now I want to use this custom content I created. So in Copilot Studio, I can actually edit my Copilot. This is actually the D365 Generative Help and Guidance Copilot. I have started to modify it. I've created it and called it the Argano Copilot for Supply Chain Management. And I've started to add data sources to it through this Knowledge tab. You can see I've already connected it to 4 other data sources besides what Microsoft provides out of the box. So the Business Process Catalog that the Fast Track team has provided, a Success by Design implementation guide, the Argano website if I want to ask information about the products we offer as a partner, Docentric. Now let's go ahead. Let's add another knowledge base. This could be a public website, but in our case, we actually want to bring in the file we just created. Maybe this is actually going to be a manual that we want to instruct our customers with. So we got Drew's Brews Manufacturing Execution Module. I'm going to upload that here, and I'm going to add that as a knowledge source. So we're adding that. We're going to essentially publish this now and make it available so that I can ask questions about that document, but within Dynamics 365 itself. So let's go ahead and let's publish this. We'll test it here. We'll make sure we have successfully been able to ask questions about the manufacturing execution module. Then we'll go back into the D365 ERP. We'll start asking questions there to see what the user would experience. So in the meantime, while that's waiting, let's ask a basic question. We would expect this Copilot, the generative help and guidance, to understand it's not custom. How do I create a sales order? This would be something that we would expect an out-of-the-box solution for Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management. So it gives me the basic instructions of how to enter it in order, and then it will actually give me access to where that information came from on Microsoft Learn. Now that we've published, I want to actually start asking it the custom questions. So first off, just make sure it's picking up any custom knowledge bases. We'll ask it who is Argano. We know we've provided a public website information. It should be able to ping off of that and tell us who Argano is. And we see we do get an answer. So it's able to respond to a custom knowledge source, not just the information from Microsoft Learn. Now let's ask it another question and see if it picked up our latest knowledge source that was just published. So Drew's Brews is a company that offers manufacturing execution module design to integrate with D365 supply chain management. So now, once again, able to pick up that document that I added. It's able to bring that in. It's not available from Microsoft Learn, but was a document I uploaded and published to this specific Copilot. So it's able to actually take that, ingest that, and return that here in my test. So let's go ahead into my delivery sandbox, my ERP system that is actually connected to, and see what the user would be able to see if they were able to ask it questions. So how do I configure Drewsbury's manufacturing execution? Not something you think you would normally be asking within D365 itself. And it is able to, once again, pick up the custom knowledge source that I added to the Copilot, give me the instructions on how to follow the steps to configure this tool. So download the MEM installer, run the installer, set up the database, finalize, configure, and so on. So while it might not replace all the things you would normally do with training, with troubleshooting, with help desk, it does allow you to extend upon basic instructions. If there are steps you want your users to be aware of, rather than just go to this form, press this button. If there are important business rules that they should apply, that's where this can get really useful, because not only just adding custom knowledge sources from scratch like I did, you have the ability to actually change the actions and the topics and the follow-up questions. So once again, if you want to change the terminology that's used, you want to add in some specific actions that you should be able to take. Now, as I'm sure there are other sessions at this conference this week with some of the latest announcements, things using agents to help interact with this data as well and automate tasks. There's a lot of possibilities that will come. So being able to just do these simple things by connecting to other tools, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, PDFs, training documentation, public websites, opens up a lot of capabilities to just aid your users in their day-to-day tasks, being able to find information in one central place. If that's hosted on SharePoint, great. You can point them to SharePoint, but do it within the Copilot experience that they're offering. So if they have questions related to their HR process or submitting time and expenses, they can ask that question directly within a Copilot experience. So that opens up a lot of options, absolutely, that they may have. Now, looking at other tools, we looked a lot at Word. We looked a lot at putting maybe that around the business analysis and functional user sets. We also have the ability to leverage Copilot in things like Excel. So once again, building out maybe data migration, a very cumbersome task. If somebody tried to do a lot of copy and paste, maybe that there's some values there that don't make sense anymore. How can I leverage Copilot within Excel? You can see some of the things it's just prompting me right away. Summarize data using pivot charts rather than coming up and trying to create a pivot chart and choose different things. Asking summary of different values. I'll go ahead and start with a simple use case. How can I create a pivot table just based on this information? So this is the item batch table that you would have to load, for example, very often at cutover, right? We want to implement and go live on inventory. We need to load our inventory through an inventory journal, but first all the batch numbers have to exist for our part numbers. So here I have a large file with all the batch numbers I need to load, and I wanted to do some analysis prior to loading those. So I asked for a pivot table here. It's given me the item numbers that have shown up the most. I can try to actually analyze that more. It's giving me 3 specific prompts I can follow up with, like how many different manufacturing dates there are, expiration dates, batch disposition codes, etc. So a lot of different things I can do just using Copilot within Excel. If I'm a financial consultant, the biggest pieces I would say are with Copilot with Finance, showing that with sample data, for example, of how you can do data reconciliation and really build out your budgets, your bank statements, and more information is a really powerful tool. So I've seen that be very useful as well. A lot of companies do very much of their reporting in Excel still, no matter which ERP you have and how great you are at utilizing it. There's always things that are going to be done in Excel in every business. So making that easier, making that more reliable, being able to optimize that and simplify a lot of that has been something that I think we've all looked forward to. So Copilot within that context is a really great feature as well. But like I said, for me, one of the biggest things is for users who aren't as intuitive with maybe some of the algorithms they need to create if they're doing any internal reporting, if they're doing VLOOKUPs and things like that. Copilot makes it a lot easier to build those types of things and teach people those sort of rules. So I've used it extensively for that during early stages of projects when analyzing data and trying to come up with certain rules or decisions. It's very, very helpful. All right, I know we are coming down to a few minutes here before we get to some questions. So I think I will reshare from the slides, and maybe Brad, if you want to rejoin, we can start getting some of the questions going.
Yeah, of course. Great presentation, Drew. We did have a couple questions. Sarah asked, how do you control or compensate for Copilot's hallucinating buttons or steps which don't exist in F&SC?
Very good question. So I think we saw a lot of kinks in the early stages on maybe some of the structure of the responses. So I can admit, even in the early days when I was testing it, I asked a very simple scenario similar to about creating a sales order hold. I was using Copilot Generative Help and Guidance within F&SC, and the instruction it returned was about Business Central. So not relevant at all for the solution I was in. I think that probably, I don't know if that was around the structure maybe of the roles or pinging from the right place. It is how you build and structure the knowledge source for sure. How do we control it or compensate for it? I think I've seen it get better. I've seen it get more reliable. Microsoft's putting a lot behind it to make sure, both from a security aspect and just from an accuracy aspect, it's as reliable as it can be. So I would say it's gotten a lot better. Rarely do I get kind of the cross system confusion now. I haven't seen that in quite some time. Knowing how to prompt obviously is also a combatant, but you shouldn't have to rely on the users knowing how to phrase the question perfectly to get an accurate response. So that's only maybe a very small part of the solution. But I think we're getting there. I don't know if we'll ever be able to fully compensate. I would say, like anything, we're in sort of the early stages, but it's improved quite a bit over the last 3 to 6 months for sure.
Awesome. Chris did ask, is there a way to point it to a website that requires authentication?
Ooh, that is a good question. I don't know 100% for sure. I don't know if somebody else in the audience would. I can take it as a takeaway and get back to you for sure. Feel free to ping me. I'll share my contact information here in a minute where you could reach out to that question if I'm not able to answer it here in the next few minutes. But not something I've attempted myself.
Sounds good. Adam asked, is the Copilot for Finance an add-on that is purchased?
Yes, Copilot for Finance would be something you would need to purchase with a license. Yes, that is not the same as Microsoft 365 Copilot, and it is not the same as the Generative Help and Guidance feature within D365 F&SC.
Let's see, we had a couple more questions come in. Alexander asked, how safe is it for business-sensitive data? There are companies that are hesitant to share their data, even with Microsoft. How can we convince them to start using Copilots?
Yeah, it's probably the most, common concern for sure, even if it's not the most common question we get. So that is the biggest piece in terms of what when you're building these, when you're extending solutions specific to the Copilot Studio, when you're providing access to your users, is understanding what you're providing access to. In theory, a lot of the things that are being provided out of box, for example, many of you, one of the things I didn't show today is some of the Copilot summary features. A lot of you probably see now popping up on master records within D365 Finance and Supply Chain Management, customer summaries, vendor summaries, item summaries, and so on. In theory, those should only be displaying data that you can already see within D365. For example, if there's information about customer balances or credit information that can typically only be seen through in AR type of role, that should also be applied to the Copilot. I think there were some inconsistencies in the early stages that we saw there. So I think making sure that is applied across all Copilots as a baseline is the user kind of security access structure. There's probably a lot of technical folks who can speak to that better than I can. But I think that's the main thing, is figuring out what are you giving access to. If I'm going to extend generative help and guidance, I want to be sure that I'm not putting any confidential information into the ERP that someone can access, right? If I'm pointing to a public site, it's probably less of a security risk than, me putting it on some sort of private company site that hosts like employee salary information or something. So those sort of things would be restricted. But when you're building Copilots within like teams and things like that, and if you have confidential data on OneDrive as a certain employee, you need to make sure you build your security around that to make sure people aren't getting information they shouldn't be seeing.
Sounds good. He also had another question. Have you tried the OpenAI's version of ChatGPT models in comparison to Copilot? How would you rate the efficiency in comparison?
Good question. I've used ChatGPT, mostly the free version myself, for similar things. I would say for a lot of the more simple use cases, for things like some of the build out of instructions, things like that, it's fairly comparable. I spend a lot more time in Copilot just because that's my life as a consultant, and the Microsoft ecosystem is understanding their tools and their capabilities. So I've probably leveraged that a lot more and done testing and verification of what it can and can't do a lot more than ChatGPT myself. So I don't know if I'm any expert in maybe comparing them from an efficiency standpoint. But in terms of the accuracy, just for like some of the use cases I shared with today, from what I've done, they've been fairly comparable in my pretty simple use cases.
Awesome. And one more question came in. Could you please show us how to add a Dataverse source as knowledge in the Copilot Studio? Do we have time for that, Drew?
I'm not sure if we'll have full time for that, but I want to make sure I'm understand the question. So you're talking about connecting straight to the Dataverse, the preview feature is my guess. This is not something I've tested quite as much or specifically planned for, but being able to customize and deploy structured data, that is something that has come out. So if you are wanting to use a Copilot, for example, to connect information from multiple systems, like you have a separate CRM or order management system that's different from Dynamics, so you have maybe some of these manuals or public websites you've added, and this is like a Copilot you're adding to a website, you could leverage that, right? So leveraging Dataverse for doing like inventory queries, that is possible. I don't have anything I think that I'd have prepared that I could probably get that up and spinning here in the next 5 minutes. But I have seen it in action. I just didn't have that prepared for today's session.
Sounds good. That wraps up our questions.
Okay. Well, I think we got a few minutes left. If there's any more, keep them coming. If not, really happy to present and kind of share on this topic. It's been exciting learning it as the features come fast and furious from Microsoft. And I'm sure there are lots of other Copilot related conversations going on today here at DynamicsCon. So really appreciate the time, and thank you all for coming and sharing and contributing to the community, and make sure you're checking out all the rest of the sessions for today. And as I said, if I wasn't able to answer your question, or if you think of something kind of at the end, I can share my information here also. I'm not sure if the screen is still sharing that.